Well, welcome back to the Peaceful Hugs podcast. I'm Lorelei, here with Mark.
Hello.
Hey, yeah.
Good to be back.
Well, today we've got a really exciting guest, Pastor B, affectionately known as Pastor B.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, we're excited to have you on. Thanks for joining us.
Well, excited to be here. Anytime we get to share and talk stories and what God's doing, we love it.
Yeah. So we know you in the Denver area as founder and executive director of Denver Dream Center, but there's more to the story of how you ended up here. So why don't you just kind of open up and tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up starting Denver Dream Center?
Yeah, long story short, grew up in Illinois. So we just finished talking about the Bears and Broncos. Very important time in our life right now. A lot of orange and blue. Went to Bible college in Missouri and just had a desire to want to work with students, be in ministry, didn't know fully what that looked like, and had an opportunity out of college to move to West Palm Beach, Florida. And what a joy that was, being a single guy living near the beach. But great church, did a lot of community stuff. And in 1999, had an opportunity to move to L.A., and great church with a huge heart for the community. So went sort of from coast to coast, got up there in 99 and started as a youth pastor, working in a great church, connecting to students and schools. But I'm a sports fanatic. And so a lot of my time, honestly, I tell people the greatest growth, I'd like to say I learned in Bible college, but my goal in college was where's the gym and where's the cafeteria? And if I could go play basketball and eat, that was my goal. Somehow I graduated. I do have a degree. But when I got to California, I love the outdoor basketball courts. And so there were some places that I would go play, and honest reality, I was the only white guy there a lot of times. And I figured out if you have game, you get credibility, you can make a team, and just loved that atmosphere. But I think God started to work in me, and I started to recognize that a lot of guys that I was playing basketball with, the next step wasn't, hey, come to church. They were working on court dates and gang violence and kids and baby mamas and addictions and things. I'm like, man, there's got to be a way to address that and connect deeper. And honestly, my wife was incredibly gracious. Our house half the time looked like a crack house, drug house. Like we just had guys at our house all the time, grilling, watching games, doing life together, figuring things out. But the sports part of that, basketball courts. And then honestly, I started spending a lot of time at the barbershops. And that cultural side of getting to understand the inner city, a culture, and just time. And in that season of my life, it really sort of opened up the perspective of I want to still be this pastor that engages people, but not with a Sunday focus. For me, it really moved into what I like to say is a Monday through Saturday. I'm an everyday but Sunday guy. And I wanted to figure out how to build relationships. And in LA, that was basketball courts and barbershops. But then figuring out what's the next steps. And it was counseling, court dates, it was jobs, it was fatherhood programs. And so we actually built a rec center. Community center with our church, and it had a couple of basketball courts and a coffee shop and offices, and it was like my favorite things in the world, right? It's like Jesus, basketball, and coffee, and we just lived there. We started running these midnight basketball leagues, getting these young men off the streets, and we'd start running 8, 9 o'clock at night. We'd go till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and was keeping them away from trouble and violence and building relationships. Loved all of that, and so that became the journey of my life to think ministry, but not just Sunday morning. Love Sunday, love church, love culture, but how do we connect in our communities? And then in 2005, crazy enough, my wife and I were in Denver for a conference. And I love telling people the story. I'm a big journaler. And there's a Los Angeles Dream Center that we had done some volunteer work with. Love their story. They're 30 years old now. Took over a hospital, and how they're reaching the city of LA is incredible. So I started journaling in 2005 after coming here, like what would it look like if God allowed us to start what we would call the Denver Dream Center? How would we engage this city? What were the programs? And I'd only been in Denver twice in my life. So I'm making it up, and I'm journaling. And that was a course of a full year of just journaling. And then crazy enough, in 2006, we had the opportunity to move to Denver. And I often tell people it's sort of how to not start a ministry or plant a church or do something new. We told our church in July. We had our second baby in August, sold our house in September, and we started driving in October. So on our way out, we had a 2-year-old, 2-month-old. We had no job, no salary, no place to live. and that's sort of my impulsiveness of like radical faith. Like I'm the guy that I'll jump and then find a place to land. Some people are very organized, and they're measure multiple times before they cut. I just start cutting, and then I'm like, all right, God, what does it look like as we're going? And grace of God, I thought it'd be a short, time period, but it was years of grinding and working it up. But we got here, in 2006, and just hit the city running. with a heart full of God. What does it look like to serve the city? What does it look like to meet the needs, build relationships and partners? And out of that was birthed the Denver Dream Center.
It's amazing.
It's amazing when you get that the faith part, right? God tells you to do something, and most of the time sounds like for you as well. Some of the most crazy things I've done are because he told me to do them, and I had no idea how I was going to do them. And every time they work out, every single time. But it's a certain feeling you get when he's talking to you, and some people think you're crazy, but you know
right.
he's doing it.
Right. And sometimes that's the only answer is just, I know that I know that I know.
Yeah.
And, I've got parents that are public school teachers and very logical and systematic and planned and friends. And they'd ask questions like, well, salary and insurance and you got babies. And the answer was like, I don't know. I just know that I know God has called us and he's going to provide. Doesn't make it easier. There's definitely some crazy years in that process. But we're so thankful for what God called us to do.
For sure. Well, I think, too, this, and there's a question in this for you, because I grew up in an inner city in Detroit. You know all about it. It's really hard for me, and I'll give you a personal story, and I'm hoping you can expand on it. So my kid grew up here, and he decides he wants to get into law enforcement, and he's going to go back to Detroit because I had moved back there. And I said, you have no idea what you're getting into, because he grew up in Lily White, Parker, Colorado. Oh, yeah, I do. No, you don't. And I remember him coming to me 6 months in, when he's now in his job there, and with tears in his eyes. And I'm small. I'm 5'9". He's 6'3", 260. And he said, I had no idea what you were talking about. I just thought, you were being racist, and that's not how we were brought up. And because he didn't understand the culture. And I think it's really hard. I don't know if you've run across this, explaining to people that grow up in Parker or Lone Tree or wherever it is, Naperville in Chicago, West Bloomfield in Detroit. Culturally speaking, it is a different world, a different life, and everything about it is different. They don't get it. And how do you get them to understand what you're doing?
Yeah, and again, for me, it all comes down to relationships, and that was me. I grew up in a small town, Illinois, but I spent a lot of time at age 11. I started to spend a lot of time in inner city Chicago, and I was going into Cabrini Green, Robert Taylor Homes. If you go back and understand those projects, like getting to Denver and trying to figure out where's the housing projects and where's the high risk in Colorado. And there were some neighborhoods. I've been here for 20 years now, but far different than a high rise like Cabrini Green, where when you read and understand the story of that, it's as scary as anything can be, and just moving through that. And so until you experience that culturally, no matter what you've been trained or taught or what you've seen in a movie, doesn't translate fully to being in that environment. Yeah,
for sure. And people don't understand the thinking or the mentality or how hard it is to get out. Yeah. Just get out.
Yep.
Right.
It's not that easy without organizations like yours.
Yeah. Or I think what I love about the way that you talk about Denver Dream Center is it's just relationships.
That's it.
You get to know people, and when they feel seen, known, and loved, that's when transformation happens.
Yeah.
And that takes a long time. You don't have, especially in nonprofit world, you're trying to prove that you're worthy of funding, and there's all this pressure to quantify or qualify things, and certainly we can qualify need, but what has it looked like for you, who you're someone who I think really lives out what discipleship, doing life on life with people looks like? How has that journey been to explain to other people, sure, that person might have ended up back in jail, but that time was still worth it? Or what has that looked like for you in the last 20, 30 years, even when you were in LA? Yeah,
some of the biggest core lessons that I've learned, one is it's become a life value, and we've made it a Dream Center core value, is to live life interrupted. Meaning no matter what we plans always shift. Plans are great, but get ready to have them interrupted or changed, or it's going to look something different. But not being so busy that you miss the moments that God even brings along in your life. And so a lot of how we live, and one of my craziest stories in LA that I love to share, because he's like family now, but when we started our basketball program, it was me with a couple hundred primarily black guys coming to play basketball that were all gang affiliated. Loved it. And God did radical stuff that I wish I had more video and stories that I could, share visually. But one of the young men that I'd met, his name's Trayvon, He's family with us now, and he's one of the greatest stories that I can share. When he was 17, he was coming to play basketball, and just one of those, as a 17-year-old, he was already that influencer, sort of the shot caller. And you could tell, like, my prayer is always, God, let me not only connect with these 100 guys that are coming, but I want to connect with the guys that are the leaders and influencers, because if I can reach them, their influence just goes forward. And Trey was one of those guys, and so got really close with us for a couple of years and sort of became family. On my day off, I hadn't looked at my phone when I was out there in California for the day I got back, and I'd missed, like, I don't know, 15, 20 calls from Trey.
Wow.
And so I call him back because obviously something's going on, and I still remember hearing his voice, where he grew up near Compton, South Central. Dad was in a different part of Compton, different gang, so no relationship with his father primarily. Mom was everything, but mom was sort of up and down, and generally whoever she was with was sort of where they were at, and she'd been with a guy that was on the streets or in a motel, and he called me. So I call him back, and he's like, B, they shot my mom. My mom's dead. And he's just panicked on the phone. So like, Trey, I'm coming over. So it's in the evening, and I'm like walking into a movie scene. I get over to the apartment complex, and people are crying, and Trayvon's there and his brothers, and it's 10 or so o'clock at night, and they're strapping up. They're going to get ready to go down and retaliate, and just, again, everything that you would see and sense in a movie. And I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or if it was just me being naive, but as they're loading up, I'm like, Trey, man, I'm coming with you. And I jump in the car. And so we're on our way to Compton at 11 o'clock at night. And now I'm thinking, like, I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And right, if there's somebody that doesn't fit in this scene and doesn't, like, belong here, like, it's me right now. And as we're getting close, I mean, all I can do is be praying the whole way. And as I get close, I pull into a gas station, like, B, you got to get out of the car. And I'm like, thank God, right? And end up, getting someone to pick me up, and I get back home. But Trayvon will tell you that moment for him is when it became real. Like someone that didn't look like them, didn't understand fully, but was willing to just get in the car and go. And I thank God I did. But Trayvon then, through his story, right, did the funeral. He's got brothers and kids, but Trey's just stayed family. But through that, he began to recognize God's calling on his life. And had always been told you're never going to amount to anything or education or school. And he ended up getting into Grand Canyon University online, but graduated magna cum laude. Realized he was actually really good at school and loved it. And then got into USC, got his master's. And then a couple of years ago, he got his doctorate. So now he's Dr. Trey, which is phenomenal, and does a lot of work. He's still with us all the time, and we keep trying to get him to move to Denver. But he's that success story of just a relational moment. That's what you said, is planting seeds, right? Sometimes you see that seed grow. Sometimes, it's someone else gets to water, someone else gets to reap. But, man, that story, his kids' lives are changed. The community has changed. His degree, yeah. So we got a Dr. Trey, which is just phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
pretty cool.
That.
Well, and that goes to love people when they least expect it, when you're values.
Absolutely. Least deserve it and least expect it. That's it.
And that's the hard part.
Oh my gosh, that is our daily. That's our daily. When people are coming out of incarceration gangs, out of addiction, they're a mess. And we deal with this all the time, that when they're in their addiction is when they get the most volatile verbally, sometimes even physically. And even though you're just trying to love on them and care for them, all of a sudden you become the closest thing in their life. And so you're the repercussion of people that get angry, frustrated. Recidivism rates in Colorado are still around 50%. Yeah. Meaning everybody that we work with coming out of incarceration, within a year, half of them will reoffend, go back. One of our guys, just last night, I got a call at 10 o'clock last night. He's been on our team for, I want to say 6, maybe 7 months, living in community corrections. We hire a lot of guys while they're still in community corrections to get them moving forward. But just had a rough moment, and so he ran from the facility last night, which means he's on an escape charge, and he'll have to face those consequences and go back to find his way back through. But there's a revolving door, and it's, love when they least expect it and least deserve it.
Why do you think the rate of recidivism is so high? Not enough programs? There's definitely not enough programs.
I'll just be as honest as I can from our perspective. It's not even lack of programs. It's lack of transformational programs. You can find enough felon-friendly jobs. Jobs are out there. So it's not, back in the day, people talk about, like, can't find a job if you got something on your record. Well, there's jobs out there. You can find jobs. It's a matter of will you stay consistent with that job. But there's a lot of addiction in the background, a lot of behavioral health and mental health challenges. And so there's a lot of good programs out there. Matter of fact, I've seen more programs get created from recovery coaching, sober homes, transitional living in the last 10 years than I've seen in my entire lifetime. It's become more of a hot button, especially coming out of 2020. We recognize mass incarceration is a critical issue. The minority, sentencing for Black and brown individuals, all of those things have been identified. A lot of programs out there. The problem is, if it's not transformational, if you're not changing the core of who they are, right, if their identity doesn't change, then they're going to walk right back in and face the same problems. And so addiction's bad. Drugs are easily accessible. People fall back into bad habits. And so the transformation piece is what's missing.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you're speaking to a problem that is, when we're thinking of organizations or programs, that's all very structural, logistical, it needs funding. Those are necessary, but oftentimes they're just the foot in the door. And so Denver Dream Center has those things. You have, I would love for you to speak to, what are some of those structured things that's like, you can show up at this time, this is how we engage with you, just to get your foot in the door. But then beyond that, everything that happens past that is kind of on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. You get a call at 10 p.m. and you're able to answer that. Like, what is that? What's the difference between the programs that Denver Dream Center has created that's been able to see transformation and even see people who make a mistake and then are able to come back in through the door and not left, you're cut off?
For anyone listening, one we say go to the website, follow us on social media. You really get to see the story. Second part of that is we tell people you just got to come down. It's really hard to explain versus what you get to experience, but in the midst of that, some of the things I've learned, and when I first got here, my heart's just breaking for the city. So I would hop on. I didn't know anybody when I first moved here. I literally knew like 4 people in the state of Colorado. And now I feel like everybody in the state of Colorado has my cell phone. It's pretty crazy. But in the early days, I would just hop on the city bus and ride around. I wanted to know neighborhoods and where the needs are. And I didn't want to we talk about cause and concern. I didn't want to establish a cause like, hey, we're going to do homeless or at-risk youth or whatever it is, if I didn't know really what the concern was. And when I first moved here 20 years ago, the homelessness wasn't really that big of a concern. We had enough beds and providers and meals and, coming out of COVID, it shifted a little bit and migrants have tagged on to that. But impact and influence sort of became the goal. And what I wanted to do is as a faith-based, as a pastor guy, I wanted to position the church to be impactful in our city. So I got to know, back in the day, Mayor Hancock, our police chief, Chief White, city council, Parks and Rec. I wanted to know, first off, I realized how much they didn't pay attention in college. I'm like, I can't remember anything about civics anymore. Like, who's elected, appointed, what does everybody do? I don't know anything. So I'm relearning all of that.
Well, that makes 2 of us, but we both spent a lot of money to get a degree, and everyone learned anything in there.
And so I'm relearning all that. In the midst of relearning all that, I'm looking like our city's budget of over $4 billion. So where does that money go, right? We all pay taxes into it. So we should be concerned where our dollars go and not just, again, it's not a dock on church, but a lot of times from a church perspective, we pray for what's going on in the city. And we want to be aware of it, but we're not providing solutions for it. And so I wanted to create something through the Dream Center that was enough impactful that would give us influence, meaning we have to do something that the city recognizes they can't survive without. And so how do we mobilize the faith community? How do we pull together? We now have over 20,000 volunteers a year that will come serve with us as we identify needs in the city. It really started first with Reentry. My very first weekend I was here, I met a guy that had gotten out of prison into community corrections. I got here on a Thursday, met him on a Sunday. And so I'm trying to figure out, what's next? And he's like, man, I'm just trying to find a job, and my family's here. And I'm like, and community corrections are in the city of Denver. Right, going to Department of Corrections, you got to go to Canyon City or Lyman or Sterling. You got to drive 2 or 3 hours to get to a facility. But then community corrections, you're in the community. They can get jobs, they can get leisure, they can go to church, but yet there was still a gap of services. So all right, we got to start to facilitate that need. And then we started recognizing these guys have families and kids, and how do we facilitate that? And then, again, my basketball itch, I'm trying to find a place to play basketball. And went to Westridge Housing Projects near Broncos Stadium, and there was an outdoor court 19 years ago, and I'm playing with some high school kids. And the next day, a kid was shot and killed in that neighborhood that I was playing basketball with. And so we started a program called Adopt a Block. How do we get into a neighborhood and be consistent where the needs exist? So what we've figured out is when people ask, like, who do we serve and what do we do? It's probably a stupid answer, but we say everything.
Yep.
Right? There's not a person. Like, we don't just exclude somebody because they don't fit a category, age bracket, family, kids. Like, we want to provide all those services. And if we can't do it, we know that there's either city resources, church partners, other nonprofits that do that specific thing. So we try to build that full continuum of care. And so now, our Monday through Saturday, it's just fun. I mean, every day we've got like our parking lot, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we feed the homeless. We have partners come in and we'll have anywhere from 80 to 200 people show up in the parking lot. And not just for food, but then they get access to resources. Tuesday nights, we work with community corrections, and we'll do big events at the Dream Center where we're doing free haircuts and job services, and we're meeting the tangible needs, but they're hearing the gospel to be transformed. Wednesday nights, our youth nights are a blast. We work with probably 7 or 8 different DPS schools and middle school and high school, and give them a chance to get mentoring and sports and programming, but get to the Dream Center. Thursday nights, a community dinner. And again, we turn it into a sit-down meal. Anybody from the streets can walk in. But volunteers come, and honestly, most of our volunteers on like a Thursday night, they're Highlands Ranch families. They want their kids to experience what it is to give back and serve and connect in a safe space. But you're around people that, man, some of the mental health and behavior health, like you're trying to conversate with somebody and they're just not there. 15 years of drug use and on the streets, it's rough. Our adopt-a-blocks on Saturdays, and then, we're a big event. I'm a big event guy. I love pulling people together. We just got out of December. Holidays were crazy. We took care of 10,000 kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like our last event, December 20th, we take over Coors Field, and the weather, this year for Colorado's been unseasonably warm, which I like. But man, we had people starting to line up at 11:30 at night, the night before, to camp out to get toys, coats, and shoes. It's crazy to me. Wow. But by the end of the day, we had 7,000 people come through Coors Field. And, the owner of Rockies is a good friend. So I think we had more people there than they had for most of their home games.
Yeah.
So it's probably a true story. A little more excitement than
I
we
love,
wrapped up.
I love the Broncos, but I'm not gonna
Woof.
I'm not gonna switch from the
It
Tigers
hurts.
to the
It
Rockies
hurts.
anytime
Not
soon.
right now.
I'm sure he's
No.
a good guy though.
Yeah.
It's a great use of Coors Field, though.
Yeah.
That's a huge, that's amazing. I
Well,
love it.
the Dream Center is so important too, because what we do is a little different, but the government programs are a mess, right? We see that, like how many people, and you probably see a ton of it. I'm interested to hear that they don't want them. It almost seems like they deliberately set up the program so they can't better themselves. They can't be as you put it on your website, to be who they want to be or should be, because they stop them. Because if you are able to move up in your job, then your daycare is cut, or your food stamps now get cut because you make $1 more than you did before, and it's a never-ending circle. So programs like the Dream Center, they're invaluable to get people out of the cycle. It's really hard.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, we don't work with folks that have been in prison, and what's that's like. Trying to transform yourself.
Yeah. And it's been probably overused and even taken the wrong way, but there is truth to systemic issues, right?
Yeah.
And we can look in, and there's neighborhoods where it becomes systemic, or a mentality that they don't know how to break free. And you're right. It's crazy. There's guys that we'll try to employ or we'll work with, but it doesn't make sense because they hit a minimum wage or maybe a survival space of what they get paid, but then they lose their Medicaid.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to work to a certain point because the cost of health insurance is so crazy right now. Yep. Or it's a single mom in the neighborhoods that wants to better themselves, but if they start working, there's a WIC and TANF and all these support pieces that it doesn't reconcile or make sense. And so wrap around. And what we've said is really it's long-term obedience in the same direction. There's no quick fix to any of this. And where the government sometimes gets stuck is they're very responsive when they identify a critical need. And then they'll form a committee, they'll get dollars, they'll try to engage some of them, but by the time they actually implement their solution, it's already shifted.
Yeah.
And nonprofits like the Dream Center or other ones that are more grassroots, we're not beholden to those dollars. Now, we need those dollars, but we can get operational pretty quick. We can respond when someone calls at 10 o'clock at night, and it's not a build a team to raise a budget to figure out what the government can do, and then you respond and already miss the moment.
What I love, too, about your focus on relationships, though, is that we hear the phrase a lot when you have a kid is that it takes a village. Well, it takes a village. You need community when you're old, too, not just when you're a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Dream Center, I feel like, is creating that community for so many so that if moving up does mean I lose childcare, I know someone who might be able to take my kid, and they're a safe person. And so you're building family for people who often don't have family.
Yep.
But then you also connect with, like, you have relationship with those in politics who are in policy and can have those conversations about what are the actual needs, what do we need written into policy, where does funding actually need to go, what does the timeline look on that. Then you also have great relationship with those who are in the police department.
Right.
And so I would love for you to talk about kind of your work towards reconciling or offering opportunities for reconciliation between those who have, broken the law and those who are upholding the law.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the greatest pictures that we get to paint through the Dream Center. I just was at District 1 yesterday with their police commander and some of their officers, and again, just strengthen that relationship. But what we tell people is, the Dream Center is faith-based. So the heart of what we do is recognizing every one of us is broken, and we needed somebody or something to rebuild that relationship with our God, right? And He would love us enough that He would send His Son Jesus. And so it's all about restoration and reconciliation. And so what we see is, like, specifically, like for a man coming out of prison, there's reconciliation that has to be in his neighborhood because he was robbing, stealing, bringing hurt, division, pain. Reconciliation for his kids. Some of the guys that we work with have done 15, 20, 30 plus years straight. And so they were absent. Like, their kids were 1, 2, 3 years old, and they went to prison for 10 years, 15 years. And now they're coming out and they want to be a dad, but their kid's 18 years old and dad was never there. Or it's a mom or a wife or baby mama that's on the outside fighting to pay rent and provide for the kids. And so there's so many broken relationships within that. And one of those two is we've got it on both sides. We've got officers that have been trained to look for gang markings and tattoos and the color of your skin or the way that you're walking, the way you're dressed, that automatically puts you in my purview as I got to keep an eye on you. But we've got plenty of people that grew up in the hood or in the streets that if a officer rolls up, that they're trained like you're the enemy, right? And so we do things, some are very simple. So twice a month we call it Coffee with the Cops. And we bring our gang members, our ex-offenders together with police officers. And honestly, sometimes I feel like a junior high pastor because we make them play like fun games. They're like, and this started years ago. And we've got officers that will even tell the story that when they first come, they didn't want to come because they didn't trust the environment they were putting into, right? It's still in the news now, right? Like, it's tough to be an armed officer. And they were coming into an environment where they didn't know what it was going to look like. And I've got guys that, like, they've been so trained. I'm like, hey, I want you to shake the chief's hand. Like, I can't shake his hand. I don't like. I'm not asking you to be his friend right now. I'm just asking you professionally just to shake his hand. And now when they meet for coffee, they're exchanging cell phone numbers. We've got guys that have got out of prison that, they're getting into a car accident. Nothing serious, but they're trained that they can't have any police interaction. And that's meant if they're doing something illegal, not if you're in a car accident, but they're still like, I can't. Yep. But then they realize, like, oh, and they'll call or they'll text a police officer who immediately responds, walks them through. And so we're doing life together. And so what we see is that, again, it's relational reconciliation. I think it's a beautiful thing within our community. People are panicking about, it's what we see around the news right now, right? Minneapolis, Portland, everything is explosive with community, ICE, police officers, and there's just, it's division. The beauty of like an adopt-a-block, the beauty of like our youth nights, we try to include city officials, police officers at everything we do. Our football camps in the summer, we'll do a lot of our Bronco camps with Jonathan Cooper. And literally we have our director of public safety. We have police officers out there, throwing footballs back and forth. When we do adopt-a-blocks, that was a conversation yesterday. It's just grill hot dogs, hand out stickers, right? Don't just be there, but be engaged. And so now what we're trying to teach is younger kids in the community that when you see an officer, he's not against you. You don't have to run, but we also want officers to recognize people by name. I think it's one of the greatest things that we've lost, right? Like, I think 20 years ago, there was a study, can't remember who did it, but it was all about social isolation. And the whole premise was when the whole like coffee, wireless movement really hit is you can be in a coffee shop and you're literally, a foot away from people, but you got your ear pods in, you're on your computer, and you're not connected to anybody. And we've lost the ability to know people's names, their stories, and have relationships. And so one of the things that really is amazing is when people come down, we're never in a hurry. We host people well. We give a place and space, whether it's police officers, gang members, people from the street to build those bridges.
It's beautiful.
And that program's awesome. I didn't know about the program. And of course, having a kid that's a police officer, in a terrible area,
Right.
arguably the worst in the city, there needs to be more programs like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because you think about it from a personal standpoint for your son, right? If he's in a neighborhood where he knows names of people or they know his name and you can personalize something, right? The easiest analogy is if you're driving down the street and you see some altercation taking place on the side of the road, most of us would be concerned enough to we're going to call 911 or we're going to pray for that person, right? But we're still going to our destination. But if you look over and it's your son or your husband or wife, you don't even think. Without hesitation, you pull the car over because that's someone that you're near, dear, close with and you know them personally. And I think it's the same thing, for someone like your son, man, if he's in a neighborhood where they know him by name and not just badge or uniform or same thing, he's calling someone out by name. That relational component, I think, can break down a lot of walls in our cities.
Well, and the police officers, to your point, that didn't want to do it originally, they have to want to do it, right? And if they don't want to do it, it just creates this never ends, and it's not going to get
It's
any
tension
better.
that's explosive.
And as when I was a young kid, growing up in a terrible neighborhood, but I was a white kid, so I stood out. It wasn't the same for me as all my black friends. And so even my view of the police was different than their view of the police.
Right.
And the police treated me different. It was only now, oddly enough, my kid becomes a police officer, and I think I see it through him. He needs to be more involved and get to know people's names.
Yeah.
And he'll be a better police officer because of it. Because
Yeah.
some of the stuff I hear, and he's a great kid, love him to death, wonderful police officer, but it's missing that community piece.
Absolutely.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah, well, you're restoring communities. Back in the day, I feel like you prioritized hiring folks who grew up in the community that they are now policing. But when it was unionized and then things just change, people move all the time, you could be transferred anywhere.
Right.
And you don't know the neighborhood or the people, and you've been trained to point out specific things about a person, their tattoos, the color of their skin, that just cause more division. So you're really... what's beautiful about Denver Dream Center is you're forming opportunities for reconciliation with relationship, but then also for transformation within a whole community, which is really amazing.
Yep.
And you have a lot of support from, like you said, you have support from professional sports, not only big conglomerates, but individual athletes. And so what does that look like in their involvement?
Yeah, our again, through impact and influence, part of that goal was creating what we say is a permission slip for partnership and giving people a chance to receive if they have a need, but giving people a chance to give if they have the ability. And the athletes thing's been fun. It's been the course of the last 20 years of just, you show up long enough and hang around long enough and the right things open up. And I'm the guy they're not going to get rid of me, so might as well figure out something to do with me. And started meeting players back in the day and got really close with Jordan Norwood and a lot of our guys that won the Super Bowl in 2015. So that has kept building from there. And so a lot of NBA players, a lot of Major League Baseball players we work with. But really the NFL guys have been great because their schedule is the best to work with.
Yeah.
One game a week, Monday half day, Tuesday they're off. But guys like Jonathan Cooper, Marvin Mims, Justin Stranad, just down the lane. And they all have huge hearts. But I also know when they're in their space of being a professional athlete, it's very scripted. They maintain the way they eat, where they go, their work life. But they do football camps with us. We actually just did, every December we do an event called Christmas to Remember for children of incarcerated parents. And so we have about 100 men and women that are incarcerated that we get to the Dream Center. They get to invite their families, their kids. And we just create this heck of a Christmas party. I mean, the food, the fun, they're building Christmas ornaments and all kind of stuff. But Jonathan Cooper, Jordan Jackson came down from current players. We also had Mark Jackson, one of the Three Amigos was there. We had Scott Osborne, the NFL Alumni Association, they come down. Steve Foley, who just made the Ring of Fame, phenomenal guy. So these guys come and they just pour in. Of course, very few people are familiar with the old school guys. I'm you don't understand, he's in the Ring of Fame and who Mark Jackson was. But
I remember those guys.
Yeah, but man, Jonathan Cooper, just the biggest smile on his. He took pictures with every kid, every person. Wow. They had a really special moment. I was able to get sort of close with Demaryius Thomas when he was alive and playing with the Broncos and did a lot of camps. So we actually Zoomed his mom in. And so if you know the story, right, Demaryius was 11 when his mom and grandma both got locked up. And so she missed his middle school, high school, college, and a lot of his NFL career. But she got out and got clemency his the Super Bowl year. And so we Zoomed her in, and she had this encouraging message for the families, the kids. And so, yeah, we want to give a place of purpose and value. And so with these athletes, if they can speak and it encourages somebody, inspires somebody, I mean, that's what we want to do.
Yeah. But I love it because you humanize everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Like everyone's equal. And we're all celebrating Christmas together.
There you go.
So, yeah, it's really cool.
So what does the future look like for you guys? I know from a facility standpoint, trying to get a bigger facility and do more good with it. And, with all of that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And what no one ever wants to talk about, which is so important, is the money as well to get to.
Yeah, no, we're hoping that person's listening today, and they're like, "Man, I've been looking for a charity to give to. The Dream Center is it." It's my wife is incredibly patient and gracious. Where I'm the guy that's like 20 hours a day and would never even come home if I forgot like I'm supposed to be home. And my wife's a homebody. She's like the prayer warrior. Like she makes sure like I'm grounded. And our got 3 boys that love Jesus. Thankful for all of that. But my brain never shuts off. And so I'm always thinking like, man, God, what's next? And how much more can we serve? And when money comes in, we immediately, we don't put it in reserve, we put it to use. And so what that does, though, is it keeps us in that front line of like radical faith, on our knees praying all the time. End of last year, we thought we found a facility and went under contract. But in the midst of that, we've mobilized to work with the city. Some of those contracts that we had ended prematurely because the city was, the tough part about getting contracts. And so they're, right, the phone calls are like, Pastor B, we love you. You guys are killing it. Sorry to tell you, right? You're like, all right, what's the button? Yep. And we're geared for like maybe an occasional like shift but we had 3 major contracts last year that was a third of our budget. And all 3, we got phone calls within about 10 days for all 3 of them, uniquely separate, so that December 31st, a third of our budget was being cut. So coming into this year, it's back to that little bit of radical faith. All right, God, what are you doing, and what do you have? Yeah. I do believe there's a campus that we're supposed to be chasing and pursuing. We want to get into housing. We want to have more resources that truly pull together some of the churches and nonprofits we work with, but provide that space and place. Because what we're in right now, we rent all the buildings, and we know that's not long-term sustainable. Great for the season, but this year we're looking for that long-term place. And it's raising budget. But we always say money follows ministry. And it's a great thing to say and like, cheer it on. But when you're out leading and doing the ministry and you're looking behind you, like, all right, money's supposed to be falling, but it's so far back that you can't see it following. Yeah. Yes. It keeps you in that place of, humility, praying like crazy. But we've seen God do some great stuff. We just, in November, long story, but we acquired a coffee shop. So Brew Culture on Colfax, if you're looking for a coffee spot, high-end, phenomenal coffee. But the owner of that was a friend from, 19 years ago. We hadn't seen each other in probably 13 or 14 years. Reconnected a couple years ago, and he was reading David Green's book from Hobby Lobby about, man, just dedicating your businesses and things to God. And so he called like, hey, I feel like we're supposed to give this to the Dream Center. So we have a coffee shop that now we're Coffee with a Cause. So we're training people to hire and share the story. And so we got a coffee shop. We're working with the city right now. It's not released yet, but it looks like February 1st, we're going to be getting keys to a small rec center in the city that now we can advance our youth programs and add some stuff on that. So, some doors are closing and there's heavy lift. We got to raise money like crazy. We are 100% dependent on donors and givers and philanthropists.
Yeah, no one ever likes to talk about it, but it's critical. They love everything that you do, but they don't realize that we're not all independently wealthy to do it.
Right.
I wish I was Bill Gates.
Man, wouldn't it be great?
We do a lot of great things.
Yeah.
But even how much $1 can help too. Like, if you can't give, volunteer your time, even $1 is
well,
helpful.
that's most of our individuals, churches, they're like, $30, $50, $100, $200 a month type of thing. But we see one person and 2. If we can get to 50 people, 100 people, like, and I don't know how much time we have left, but this is one of the things that I've learned through doing this journey. I grew up as a church kid. I've always heard the story of the fishes and loaves, right? Yes. And it probably did happen how we read it, that it's, first off, the need is far greater than anybody can meet, right? And it's funny because Philip and Andrew come to Jesus and like, hey, they're getting hungry. We should probably send them away. And Jesus answers what? You feed them. And they're looking like, Jesus, you're crazy, right? Like there's no Uber, DoorDash. We got this does not make sense. And one of them has got he's the accountant guy on the team, and he's like, budgeting what it would cost. Like it's a year's labor just to, to feed this group. And some on the midst of that, there's a child that I'm thinking is probably me as a parent, right? I would always lose my kids. My mom, my wife, seriously, when my boys were little and I would take them to a Nuggets game, she would write their phone number on their arms. And I'm like, I'm their dad. Like, what do you think's going to happen? She's like, I know you, just in case. And so I don't know, maybe a parent loses their kid and he finds his way to Jesus, right? He's got some fishes and loaves. And the need and his resource don't line up.
No.
But Jesus, he's thankful, begins to break it and begins to distribute it. But I think maybe the way the miracle happened, this isn't like, don't take this as theology, but I think maybe the way the miracle happened is it took the faith of a boy that didn't see the size of the need, but took what he had as a resource and gave it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there was someone else in the crowd that, you know what, I had 2 sandwiches, but I didn't think my extra sandwich was going to do anything. And someone else had a granola bar. And I think sometimes if it's, right, we won't give our $50 because we know the need is $1.5 million.
Right.
And we're like, what's my $50 going to do? Well, your 50 with your 20 with your 100, like, and all of a sudden people start to give what they think is insignificant, and it becomes significance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
That's so
I actually
good.
like that.
Yeah.
And it very well could have happened that way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's how we see God meeting the needs through the Dream Center. I wish I could tell you, a story of like, the athletes we work with, and they give athletes give time. They really don't give money. The churches with individuals, I'm telling you, the average is like $30, $50, $100 a month type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, we have a few bigger hitters that we have, but like we're not getting $1 million donations.
Yeah.
We are getting a lot of people spread with what they can do. And so every success, every story we get to share is because of someone's faithfulness and what seems small.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And God blesses those who are faithful to what he's called them to do. So we're grateful for you just kind of continuing to take one step of faith at a time. As we're closing, I like to ask every guest 2 questions. So the first is, what's the best piece of life advice you've ever been given?
That have ever been given. That's a...
Write your kid's number on.
Yeah. If you send your kids to a game, if you're an ADD dad like me, write your... well, I don't know if it's been given or what I've learned, probably a combination of both. But really, the last couple of years, because every decade's been different, right? Now in my 50s, I just see things different than what I did in my 20s, 30s, and in my 40s. And what I see in God's faithfulness is, again, long-term obedience in the same direction. So many people will come and ask, well, how did you get to do this? And how did you do that? And a lot of times I'll tell people, like, my first 10 years in Denver, I worked part-time jobs. And I came from a big church. I had a great salary. I was a very comfortable pastor, if I'm being honest. And I get to Denver and tell my wife, like, give me 2 years. We'll have salary and insurance and life will be great. 10 years later, I'm still working part-time jobs for minimum wage that had nothing to do with my career. It was just a matter of, can I feed my kids and pay my mortgage? And I look back in 10 years of just serving, 10 years of working, and then watching doors open. Now we're in our 20th year. And so when we share stories of what's going on in the streets or the prisons or with politicians or athletes, long-term obedience in the same direction. People get frustrated because we live in such an impulsive generation. Like, I want it done now, right? I don't want to wait an extra 2 minutes for my coffee. I want things to be like quick, handed, instant. And if it doesn't, I'll change jobs, I'll change careers, I'll move cities, right? I'll change spouses, like, right? Everything ends and is quick because we're just too impatient. So long-term obedience in the same direction.
That's so good. I love that. And then the last question is, what is a book or movie or both that you recommend everybody must see or read before they die?
My favorite book actually is a guy that we went to the same Bible college, Mark Batterson, pastors in Washington, D.C., National Community Church, phenomenal church. He's, I think, authored like 26 books now. A lot of people know Circle Maker or other books, but his first book he wrote was called In the Pit with the Lion on a Snowy Day. And then 10 years later, he wrote it called Chase the Lion. And it was one of like, almost like one of my life verses. And then he wrote the book. I'm like, that sort of resonated, stuck with me. But there's a verse in 2 Samuel about David's mighty men. And you're reading through and you can go so fast, but it talks about Benaiah, who went into a pit and killed a lion on a snowy day. And so the premise of that Chase the Lion book, especially if you're a sports person, man, it's just, I make our staff read it outside of the Bible. I'm like, you got to read Chase the Lion. And it is, in your biggest fear, biggest obstacle might lie your greatest opportunity. There's just so many chapters in there. So for me, Chase the Lion's my go-to.
That's awesome. Great. Well, thank you.
Well, Melinda Gates, if you're listening, he needs $1 million.
Yeah, please.
Or even we're working our way toward the Walton Penner family. They're the owner of the Broncos, and they're in our city. There's some big moments. And
$20, $30 to Denver Dream Center would be great.
Yep.
Help out help these folks out and get another Dr. Trayvon, right?
There you go.
It's all good. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it a lot.
No, my honor.